like my video, subscribe to my channel for more juicy.
Ride hard! We must catch them before dark!
Prince Zayden was born in the secret Serpent Kingdom of Enuango, a mystical place hidden deep beneath the Nigerian forest, where the ground sparkled with magical crystals and rivers shimmered like liquid gold. This kingdom, ruled by a proud line of serpent kings, had long avoided the world of humans, believing them to be greedy, weak, and unworthy of their attention. Zayden, however, was different from the other serpents in his kingdom. Although he was tall, handsome, and gifted with supernatural powers, he felt a deep sadness that he could not shake. His royal lineage had blessed him with everything a prince could ask for: luxury, wealth, and the adoration of his people. But Zayden was tired of it all. He longed for something more than the empty pleasures of royalty. He desired true love, a love not based on his power or riches, but one that came from the heart. He dreamed of a woman who would love him for who he was, not what he had. Prince Zayden's life inside the Serpent Kingdom had always been surrounded by silence that felt heavier than noise, because even though the palace was filled with servants, guards, and elders, his heart felt lonely in a way that no one around him seemed to understand. Every day, he watched members of the royal council bow before him, praising his strength, his wisdom, and his future as the next great ruler, yet none of those praises reached his soul, because he knew they respected the crown and feared his power rather than truly knowing him as a being with emotions and desires. The Serpent Kingdom was beautiful beyond imagination, with tall crystal pillars rising from the ground, glowing softly with ancient magic. While streams of warm light flowed through underground rivers that had existed long before time was counted. The air was always calm, filled with the soft echo of hissing winds and distant chants from priest serpents who guarded the old laws of the kingdom. It was a place of greatness and mystery, yet for Zayden, it felt like a golden cage that kept him trapped in a destiny he never chose for himself. From a young age, Zayden had been taught to rule with strength and fear, because the elders believed that respect could only be earned through power. He learned how to command the earth, how to speak to serpents of all kinds, and how to bend nature itself to protect the kingdom from enemies. Even with all this knowledge and power, his heart always leaned toward compassion, and he often found himself questioning the old ways, wondering why love was treated as weakness and kindness was seen as something dangerous. As the years passed, the elders began to pressure him to choose a royal bride from among the noble serpent families, women who were powerful, proud, and trained to rule beside him. Many of them admired him deeply, but their admiration was rooted in ambition, because they saw him as a path to power and influence rather than as a partner to love. Each meeting left Zayden feeling more certain that the life planned for him was not the life he wanted to live. Late one night, while the kingdom slept beneath the glowing stones of the underworld, Zayden walked alone through the ancient halls of the palace, listening to the echoes of his own footsteps as memories filled his mind. He remembered the stories he had secretly listened to as a child. Tales of humans who loved without magic, who stood by one another through hunger and hardship, and who valued the heart more than gold. Those stories had stayed with him, planting a quiet hope that refused to die, even when the elders insisted that humans were selfish and untrustworthy. Standing before the great mirror of ancestors, where past serpent kings appeared in reflections of light, Zayden finally admitted the truth to himself, which was that no throne, no crown, and no kingdom could give him peace if his heart remained empty. He understood that if he stayed, he would become a ruler respected by many but truly loved by none, and that was a future he could not accept, no matter how glorious it appeared from the outside. That night, with steady hands and a determined heart, Zayden performed the ancient sealing ritual that only royal blood could awaken, a ritual meant to suppress his serpent powers and lock them deep within his spirit. As the magic wrapped around him, his strength dimmed, his glowing eyes returned to a normal human shade, and his royal aura faded, leaving him looking like an ordinary man with nothing special to show the world. The pain of sealing his power was intense, but Zayden welcomed it, because he knew it was the price he had to pay to discover true love. After sealing his powers, Zayden removed his crown and placed it gently on the stone floor of the throne room, bowing his head not in defeat, but in gratitude for the life that had shaped him. He did not hate his kingdom, nor did he reject his people, but he understood that his journey could only begin once he stepped away from everything familiar and allowed himself to be judged as a simple man without titles or riches. As he made his way toward the hidden passage that led out of the Serpent Kingdom and into the human world above, Zayden felt fear and excitement mix within him, because he knew the world of humans was unpredictable and often cruel. Still, he carried hope in his heart, believing that somewhere beyond the forest and dusty roads, there existed a woman whose kindness would shine even in hardship, a woman who would see him not as a prince or a powerful being, but as a man worthy of love. With each step he took toward the surface of the earth, Zayden left behind the echoes of royal chants and ancient magic, and as he emerged under the open Nigerian sky for the first time in his life, he took a deep breath and welcomed the uncertainty ahead. He did not know what awaited him, nor did he know how long his journey would last, but he was certain of one thing, which was that he would rather face the world as a poor man searching for love than live forever as a lonely prince sitting on a throne made of gold. And with a powerful decision guiding his path, Prince Zayden began his journey toward the human village that would soon change his destiny forever, unaware that his choice would not only shape his own life, but also transform the lives of everyone he was yet to meet. After leaving the Serpent Kingdom behind, Zayden walked for days, his steps leading him through thick forests and wide rivers, across mountains and valleys he had never before imagined. He could feel the weight of the world upon his shoulders, not from the kingdom he had abandoned, but from the deep yearning in his heart for the one thing he had never truly known, love. With each step, his powers remained hidden, sealed within his very being, waiting for the moment when they would be needed. Yet, he was no longer the proud prince who commanded kingdoms and ruled with a fierce hand. He was now a man of the earth, with nothing but the clothes on his back and the hope that his journey would lead him to a love as pure as the stories he had heard as a child. Zayden finally reached the outskirts of Umidike, a small village nestled in the rolling hills, bathed in the warm glow of the sun setting behind the distant mountains. The air was thick with the scent of wildflowers and earth, and the sounds of children's laughter and women's voices filled the air as he walked through the narrow, dusty streets. At first, he was just another stranger passing through, a tall, dark man with no possessions and a weary look in his eyes. His arrival barely caused a stir, for the villagers had long grown accustomed to the comings and goings of travelers and traders who sought refuge or a brief rest in their village. But for Zayden, this place felt different. There was a quiet desperation in the air, a sadness that lingered in the hearts of the people. The village was suffering. It was clear to Zayden from the start. The fields that should have been lush with crops were dry and barren, the homes that should have been strong and steady appeared worn and frail. The village well, which should have been a source of life, was dry, its once abundant waters had long since disappeared. The air itself felt thick with hopelessness, as if the land had forgotten how to give life. As Zayden made his way deeper into the village, he noticed the tired faces of the men and women who worked tirelessly under the hot sun. Children played in the dust, their bare feet kicking up clouds of dirt, and the elders sat on wooden benches outside their homes, their eyes clouded with worry as they spoke in hushed tones. Zayden's heart ached for these people, strangers who had never known him, yet who seemed to carry a weight of sorrow that mirrored his own. But it was not only the visible suffering of the village that struck him. It was the resilience in their eyes, the quiet strength that refused to die, even as their bodies and land withered away. There was something about the village. Something that spoke to him deeply. He felt as though fate had led him here, though he did not yet know why. Meeting Amora, as Zayden continued to walk through the village, he came across a scene that would change everything. By the edge of the village, near the last remaining grove of trees, stood a young woman. She was bent low, tending to a small garden of herbs, her movements graceful and slow, as if she had all the time in the world despite the desperate need around her. She wore simple clothes, her face framed by the soft, dark curls of her hair. Her eyes, though focused on the task before her, carried a warmth that Zayden had never seen in anyone before. There was something gentle about her, a softness that seemed out of place in a world so hard and unforgiving. Her name was Amora, And though Zayden did not know it yet, her kindness and compassion would soon be the beacon that guided him through the darkness he had carried for so long. Amora glanced up as she heard Zayden's footsteps approaching. For a moment, their eyes met, and there was an undeniable spark between them. Zayden felt a warmth spread through his chest, something he had not felt in years. It was as if, in that one fleeting glance, she had seen him, not the prince, not the powerful serpent ruler, but the man who longed for something real. "Hello," Amara said softly, her voice carrying a gentle lilt that seemed to soothe the air around them. "Can I help you with something?" Zayden hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to respond. He had traveled so far and hidden so much of himself that speaking to a stranger, even one as kind as Amora, felt unfamiliar. But there was something about her that made him feel safe, as if for the first time in a long while, he could let his guard down. "I'm just passing through," Zayden said, his voice quieter than he had intended. "I'm looking for work. Is there anything I can do to help?" Amara smiled, a smile that seemed to light up her entire face. "Work is always needed here," she replied. "We could use some help with the fields, or maybe you can help us repair a few of the huts. Things have been difficult lately." Zayden nodded, grateful for her kindness. He didn't care about the work. What mattered was the chance to stay close to her, to learn more about the village and its people. There was a quiet strength in her, a peace that he had never known before, and it drew him in like nothing else. As they talked, Zayden found himself sharing bits of his journey, though he kept his true identity hidden, speaking only of the hardships he had faced and the hope he now carried. Amora listened intently, her eyes filled with empathy, never once asking for more than he was willing to share. There was no judgment in her gaze, no curiosity to know who he truly was, and for the first time in his life, Zayden felt something stir deep inside him. It wasn't just attraction or a desire for companionship, it was the feeling of being seen, of being accepted without question. He knew, deep down, that Amara was different from the women he had met in the Serpent Kingdom. She was not interested in his powers or his lineage. She was interested in him as a person, the quiet hero. Over the next few days, Zayden walked alongside the villagers, offering his help wherever it was needed. He repaired roofs, helped with the farming, and offered advice on how to dig deeper wells. Though the villagers did not know it, Zayden was not simply an ordinary man. His knowledge was vast, his skills honed by years of training in the Serpent Kingdom. Yet, he kept all of this hidden, choosing instead to blend in with the common folk. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the village elder, Uncle Ens, approached Zayden with a weary look in his eyes. "There is talk of land robbers nearby," he said quietly. "They've been raiding nearby villages, taking what little we have left." Zayden's heart tightened. He had already noticed the fear in the villagers' eyes, but hearing it spoken aloud made it all the more real. The robbers were a constant threat, and no one in the village had the strength to defend themselves against them, but Zayden was not just any man. He had powers that no one could imagine, powers that could change the course of this village's fate. Still, he kept them sealed, for now, unwilling to reveal the truth of who he really was. The peace that had settled over Umidike was only temporary. It was a fragile peace, and deep down, Zayden knew that the shadows of the land robbers would eventually creep back into the village. For weeks, the villagers enjoyed the benefits of the changes Zayden had quietly brought about. The wells were full, the crops flourished, and the community's spirit was restored. But the robbers were a constant threat, always lurking in the shadows, waiting for an opportunity to strike. One afternoon, while Zayden walked beside the villagers in the fields, a cloud of dust appeared on the horizon. The air grew thick with tension, and the sounds of birds and insects faded into an eerie silence. Zayden's senses, honed by his serpent ancestors, tingled with the awareness that something was wrong. He looked toward the village gate and saw a group of armed men riding swiftly toward Umidike, their faces twisted with malice. It was the robbers, and this time, they had come with a vengeance. The villagers, who had never been able to defend themselves, immediately panicked. They ran to their homes, seeking shelter, while others rushed to gather what little they could carry. The air was filled with frantic voices, desperate cries, and the clatter of feet on the dirt roads. The robbers were not just looking to steal, they were looking to destroy. They had heard of the village's recent prosperity. And they were angry. Angry that the villagers had dared to thrive while they struggled to maintain control. Zayden stood still for a moment, watching the robbers approach with their weapons raised. His heart beat slowly, the calmness within him growing as he prepared for what was to come. He had spent his life running from his true identity, hiding his powers in the hopes of finding peace and love, but now, he knew that the time had come to embrace his true self. Without a word, he stepped forward, his long strides carrying him toward the center of the village, where the robbers were now gathering. The villagers had no idea what he was about to do, and for Zayden, that was the way he wanted it. He would not reveal his secrets unless it was absolutely necessary. And now, it was time to protect, the battle for the village. The leader of the robbers, a tall, burly man with a scar running down his face, stepped forward, raising his sword. He saw Zayden approaching and sneered, "Who is this?" The robber leader growled. "Another poor fool to be crushed underfoot." Zayden did not respond with words. Instead, he closed his eyes for a moment and reached out with his senses, feeling the pulse of the earth beneath him. The earth was alive, teeming with energy, and Zayden called upon the forces of nature that flowed through him. The ground began to tremble beneath the robber's feet. It was subtle at first, just a slight shaking of the ground, but as Zayden concentrated, the tremors grew stronger. The air grew heavier, as if charged with electricity, and the trees seemed to sway in a rhythm that only Zayden understood. The robbers stopped in their tracks, their eyes widening in confusion and fear. They had heard stories of magical forces in the land, but they never believed them to be true. They had dismissed the rumors as superstition. But now, they could feel it, the power in the air. The weight of something ancient and powerful awakening around them. Zayden's eyes glowed with an inner fire, and the very earth seemed to obey his commands. With a swift gesture, the ground beneath the robbers began to shift. The earth cracked open, sending stones and dirt flying in all directions, forming an impenetrable barrier that surrounded the robbers, trapping them within a ring of solid earth. Impossible. The leader shouted, struggling to free himself from the encroaching rocks. "What kind of magic is this?" Zayden's voice was calm, but it carried the weight of centuries of wisdom. "It is not magic, but the will of the earth itself," he said, his voice resonating with authority. "And you will not destroy this village." The robbers, now desperate, tried to fight back, raising their swords and axes. But the trees themselves seemed to come to life, their branches stretching out like giant hands, sweeping down to disarm the attackers. The robbers swung their weapons in panic, but the branches held them firm, pinning them to the ground. In the distance, the villagers watched in awe as Zayden stood in the center of the chaos, his eyes glowing brighter than ever, commanding the very earth beneath them to rise in defense of their home. The robbers struggled, but they could not break free from the grip of the earth, which seemed to have a will of its own, stronger than anything they had ever encountered, revealing the true power. As the robbers continued to struggle, Zayden took a step forward, raising his hand to the sky. The winds began to howl, whipping around him like a storm, and the trees groaned as if responding to his call. The energy in the air was palpable, a force of nature that seemed to bend to his every command. One by one, the robbers fell to their knees, the earth holding them in place, their swords and weapons scattered around them. The leader, now trembling with fear, finally understood the power that stood before him. "You," he gasped, his voice trembling. "You are not just a man." Zayden's eyes flashed with a golden light, and his serpent form began to emerge, though only in part. His skin shimmered with scales, his eyes glowing like two molten suns. His voice was no longer the voice of a simple man, it was the voice of a king, one who had ruled over the Serpent Kingdom for centuries. "I am Zayden, the Prince of the Serpent Kingdom," he declared, his voice booming with power. and you will never harm these people again." The robbers, now completely trapped, could only look up in fear as Zayden's true form fully revealed itself. The magic he had kept hidden for so long was now on full display, and the earth responded to his every command. The serpent power that flowed through his veins had awakened, and with it came the strength to protect the village that had become his home, the fleeing robbers. With one final motion, Zayden lifted his hand, and the earth released its grip on the robbers, but they were too shaken to continue their assault. Fear had taken root in their hearts, and they knew that they could never defeat the force they had just encountered. They stumbled back, shaking, and without a word. They turned and fled, disappearing into the wilderness, never to return. The villagers, who had been watching from their homes, emerged from their hiding places, their eyes wide with disbelief. They had witnessed something they had never thought possible, the power of the earth itself bending to the will of a single man. The man who had been their humble worker, their quiet friend, was revealed to be something far greater, a prince, a ruler with powers that defied all logic. A new understanding. Amara stepped forward, her eyes locked on Zayden. She had seen the power in him before, but now, in this moment, it was undeniable. She had witnessed the true depth of his strength, his wisdom, and his love for the people of Umidike. Zayden's eyes softened as he looked at her, the glowing light fading from his eyes. He had revealed his secret, but it had been necessary to protect the village, and to show the villagers that true power was not in wealth or status, but in the strength of the heart. "I did not want to reveal this part of myself," Zayden said quietly, his voice no longer filled with the thunderous power of the Serpent King. "But I could not stand by while you suffered. I will always protect you, Amora, and this village." Amora stepped closer, her gaze full of understanding and compassion. She reached out and took his hand, her touch gentle yet strong. "I have always known there was something special about you, Zayden," she said softly. "But this is more than I ever imagined." Zayden smiled, the weight of his hidden life lifting as he finally found a place where he could be truly loved for who he was, both as a man and as the prince he had long denied. The sun began to set on Umidike, casting a warm glow across the village that had become a symbol of resilience. The air was different now, lighter, filled with the sounds of laughter and the soft murmur of excited voices as the villagers emerged from their homes, slowly regaining their confidence after the attack from the robbers. They had witnessed something extraordinary that day, something that none of them could ever have imagined. Zayden, the quiet stranger who had walked beside them, had turned out to be no ordinary man. His true identity, once hidden, was now known to all. He was not just a traveler, not just a humble laborer, but a prince, a ruler with powers that could shape the world. But despite his revelation, Zayden felt no desire for glory. The village was safe, the robbers were gone, and the people were at peace. That was all that mattered to him. Yet, amidst the celebration and awe of the villagers, there was one person who stood out, Amara. Since that day, Zayden had found it difficult to look away from her, not only because of her beauty but because of the strength and kindness that emanated from her in a way he had never seen before. Her love for him had been unconditional, and that was something Zayden had not experienced in his life. Amora, for her part, was still in awe of everything that had transpired. She had watched Zayden reveal his true form, seen the powers he wielded, and witnessed the land itself bend to his will. But none of it had frightened her. Instead, it had only deepened her feelings for him. For the first time in her life, she had met a man who was not afraid to be himself, to show the world who he truly was. Zayden's power was undeniable, but it was his heart that truly captivated her. In the days that followed, Zayden and Amora spent more time together. They would walk along the edge of the fields, talking quietly, sharing stories of their past, their hopes, and their dreams. Amora had always dreamed of a life of peace and happiness, where people worked together, cared for each other, and lived in harmony with the land. Zayden, who had once thought that power and dominance were the only paths to peace, found in Amora a new vision, a world where love, kindness, and understanding ruled, not fear. One evening, As they sat beneath the shade of an ancient tree, Amora turned to Zayden, her eyes full of curiosity. "How do you feel now, Zayden?" she asked softly. "Now that your powers are known. Now that you've shown your true self." Zayden looked into her eyes, feeling a warmth spread through him that had nothing to do with his magical abilities. "I feel free," he said, his voice gentle. "For the first time in my life, I can be myself. I don't have to hide anymore. And I don't need to seek power or wealth. I have found something more valuable here, peace. And I have found someone who sees me for who I truly am." Amara smiled, her heart swelling with emotion. She had known that Zayden was special, but hearing him say it, hearing him speak of his freedom and his happiness, made her heart leap. "I've always believed," Amara said, her voice soft but firm, "that true power doesn't come from wealth or status. It comes from the heart, from kindness, from love. And that's what I see in you, Zayden. Your power, your magic, it's not what defines you. It's your heart, your willingness to protect and care for others." Zayden's golden eyes softened, and he reached out to gently take her hand in his. "You are right, Amara," he said. "I've spent so long hiding who I am, thinking that the only way to make a difference was through power. But you've shown me a different way. You've shown me that true strength comes not from ruling, but from leading with love." Amora blushed at his words, her heart racing. She had always believed in the power of love, but to hear Zayden, the mighty prince, speak of it with such sincerity touched her deeply. A new beginning for Umidike. As the days passed, Zayden and Amora's relationship grew stronger, and so did their bond with the people of Umidike. Zayden, once a prince hidden in the shadows, now became the protector and leader of the village, not through force, but through wisdom, compassion, and love. He used his knowledge of the land to help the villagers thrive, teaching them how to cultivate their fields, how to protect their resources, and how to build a future of sustainability. The wells, which had once been dry, were now constantly flowing with fresh water, and the crops grew lush and green. The people of Umidike had learned to live in harmony with the land, and Zayden had guided them with gentle hands, never once asserting his power for selfish gain. Amora, too, took on a new role in the village. She became a leader in her own right, helping to teach the children, guiding the women in their daily tasks, and working alongside Zayden to rebuild the village from the inside out. Together, they became a team, two souls united by a vision of peace and prosperity, each supporting the other in their shared mission to create a better future for Umidike. The villagers began to see Zayden not just as a prince, but as a man who had given up his kingdom to live as one of them. They saw him not as a ruler, but as a protector, someone who cared deeply for them, not because of his power, but because of his heart.